Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Yeah. Everybody's always so excited. I appreciate it. Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley. I had to pause there for a second to remember what we were doing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like it's been a long time. It's weird.
This is like the third week in a row where we literally do the same thing at the same time each week. But when it got here, I thought, man, did we miss an episode?
I don't think last one counts.
What year is it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm your host, Alan Mosley, for now. And joined as always by the number one producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Dave! How are you doing?
I'm exhausted. I've been working on it. Streaming, watching 3-hour movies and stuff, so I'm a little tired, but
Is that what we're going to do now, is it?
Trucking along. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Let me tell you something really quick. So, everybody, if wherever you're listening, close your eyes really quick. I just want you to imagine this. Maybe we need some music.
Okay.
Imagine it's finally that day. The movie you've been the most excited to see is coming to theaters. You're so pumped. The reviews are in. This is the greatest film of all time. And so you go out to the theater to watch the movie. And I mean, you're in the zone. You've got your popcorn. You got your soda pop. If you're from one of those gay states up north, the Coke down here. And you realize, oh, this is one of them mafia movies. This is a gangster film.
Oh.
Let me tell you this cast really quick. You've got the Marlon Brando. This was before he called out the Jews and got blacklisted. You've got Al Pacino, right? You got James Caan. You got Diane Keaton. You got John Cazale, which a lot of people won't know that name, but because he died young, but he was only in 4 movies and they were all like Best Picture nominees. It's crazy. You got Robert Duvall. You got Abe Vigoda. Oh my God, Abe Vigoda. Can you believe this shit? All of these people.
SpongeBob?
Never
I
speak
might be
again
thinking of
while I'm
something
talking. Let's just set that. Okay. And if you're asking yourself, how in the world did you get all these amazing young actors in the same film when they're all so like successful and famous? They're all so successful and famous because they were in The Godfather. That's how they became successful and famous. They were in The Godfather. And then, trouble's brewing. It gets to some of these intense scenes. Look, there's no subtitles at the bottom of the screen telling you that Tessio was the traitor. Alright? You gotta watch. You've got to watch the fucking movie. And just then, some people talking. There's some people talking during The Godfather. And that's when you realize this was a mistake. I should have just watched it by myself. I should have never tried to share things that I love with other people. I think the only way that those people can make amends for their transgression is to watch The Godfather Part 2.
You're doubling down on it.
I think let's you know what, really quick, let's do a Twitch poll. We haven't done one of those in a while. Where is that? Does anybody even know where those? Yeah, here it is. Let's do a Twitch poll really quick. Should Dave and Mary watch Godfather Part 2? We'll give it, you know, we're doing a live monologue here, so I'm only going to give it like 3 minutes. We'll check back in on the votes. So if you're over on Twitch, Dave, do the thing, Dave. We're on Twitch. You can be on Twitch with a bunch of cool emotes. You can support the channel. Twitch.tv/Alan Mosley TV. Go over there, check out the show. So anyway, get your votes in. So Dave, you guys have any big plans for Valentine's Day?
Not really. I worked a 12-hour shift, and then we hung out with the kids for a little bit, handed out some candy, and then we watched a movie. Called in tonight.
Was it at least an impactful film? Something that you guys could grow with as a relationship?
I mean, there was some memorable moments.
Let's see how that poll's doing really quick. So right now, 67% of respondents have voted, should Dave and Mary watch Godfather Part 2? Yes. And 33% have said also yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll check back in before that runs out. So there was something actually I did want to talk about before we completely run out of time and we have to move on, because we have a guest tonight. Oh my God, Dave! People still appear on the show.
That's crazy. Doesn't make any sense.
Were you here last week?
Evidently, the guest wasn't.
Well, yeah, right. So we have a guest tonight. Fantastic interview. So we can't waste any more time.
Yeah.
No more talking about The Godfather, which is the greatest film of all time, based on the book by Mario Puzo. Simon agrees. Oh my God, even Simon gets it. Yeah. If you'll recall, in the very first scene, the introduction of Don Vito, he's sitting in his chair petting Simon, because Simon appeared in the film.
Basically.
Yeah. I did want to mention this whole school shooting thing in East Lansing over at Michigan State University. And I hate to end such a fantastic monologue with such a serious topic, But I want you to take a look at this image right here. Now, this is not a trick question, Dave. This is a real question. I don't want you to read too much into it.
Okay.
Can that gun-free zone sign stop a mass shooting?
No.
Why not?
Because criminals don't follow signs.
Because it's just a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a sign. It can't, like, the sign can't
no
do
real
anything.
power.
That's a good answer. Because, and I'll tell you why it's such a good answer, Dave. Because if you understand why that sign can't stop the shooter, then you also understand why a law wouldn't stop them either.
Yeah.
Because the law doesn't actually do anything. Someone bent on committing acts of violence against other people can only be physically prevented from doing so by other people. A sign can't do it. Words can't do it. Paper can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Only people defending themselves can do it. You know, there's actually, believe it or not, there's actually universities in the country right now. There are states where they have passed laws that say that students and faculty are legally allowed to carry firearms on campus.
That's exciting.
Now, if you believed the stories that come out of one particular side of the political spectrum, you would think those universities must literally be the Wild West. Like, Emmanuel McCoy and half Chinese Jesus Smith are dueling it out on these university grounds because they can, right? Because everyone's got guns and everyone's walking around. It's a war zone. People are shooting each other left and right. Oh, but actually no. Actually, at the schools where they don't just have gun-free zone signs sitting up around campus and the students and faculty are legally allowed to carry firearms, they actually don't walk around shooting each other all the time. Not only that, you know what else doesn't happen? They're not targeted by mass shooters either. Crazy. Crazy that. You know, I saw somebody make the interesting observation that, you know, Ukrainian students are actually more capable of defending themselves right now from mass shootings than American students are. And that's at Americans' expense, no less.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the point I want to leave everyone with before we take our first commercial break is even if you believe in gun control, though you're wrong and an idiot for thinking that, the actual gun control doesn't actually stop a shooting. Because that's still just words on paper. It would have to be, before you even got to that point, it would have to be enforced. In the same way that the signs saying no guns allowed don't actually stop the shooters, whatever is written on that sign has to be enforced. Mm-hmm. And I actually had an idea, something I decided we wouldn't do because we're lazy. I actually thought about getting you to make one of the wheels that you guys do, and it would be the wheel. And what we would do on the wheel is it would be who's to blame for the shooting. and the people I was gonna put Republicans. I was gonna put the NRA. Mm-hmm. But hold on a sec. I was gonna put how about this? How about the shooter is responsible for the shooting?
Oh,
I know. Oh. Stay with me on this. If the shooter hadn't shot people, then they wouldn't have been shot by the shooter. So the shooter is
kind of a stretch.
Pretty responsible. But I'm not just gonna leave everybody off the hook. How about we also blame the state of Michigan and Michigan State University? I'll tell you why. Because in that particular place, they do put up signs saying, "No shoot, please, thank you." And that's it. And those kids are not allowed to defend themselves. Let's also blame campus security. Because if you're gonna restrict the students and faculty from being able to defend themselves, then you are now taking on the responsibility of their defense. I think that's only logical.
Yep.
Well, they didn't really do a great job, did they? Let's blame the local law enforcement. Because let's face it, it's a state university, so the state is involved, and the local PD. The local PD are exactly the kind of people that if you, being a completely innocent and respectful member of society, walked onto past that gun-free zone sign with a gun strapped to your hip, they would come to enforce that sign upon you. But they sure as hell didn't enforce that sign upon anyone else before he was able to unload into a few kids. Let's blame the parents.
Oh.
You know why we should blame the parents? Because we know that these universities fill your kids' heads with a bunch of commie gobbledygook, and then they come home and you don't even recognize them anymore. We already knew that. We know that they enforce things like mask mandates and jabs because they don't give a shit about the side effects, and they're anti-science. Which, if they're anti-science, what kind of academic institution can this really be? We know that they refuse to shoulder the burden of your child's defense while refusing to allow your child to defend themselves. How could you let your children go there? Now, I know that they're over 18 years old and they're legally adults at that point, but they're still your children, right? That's still your kids. Even if they're 19 or 20, that's still your kid. Would you send your kid somewhere where they told them, we're not going to protect you and you can't protect yourself? Hey, there's some dangerous people out there. Good luck. Quit sending your children to these places. So I think everyone can get a little bit of the blame, but of course, the shooter gets a little bit more blame than everybody else. Yeah, I don't know what that was, but anyway.
Yeah. No.
This got really dark and...
It did. It's got somber.
This was the longest you sat in silence and listened. I wish you could have done that during the Godfather! Anyway, guys, we're going to be back with the meme of the week and the meme... The what?
The
What'd you just say?
Coffee? Is that
can
now?
Can you please wait?
Okay.
Please?
All right.
Please? All right.
Yes.
You know what? Oh, hold on. I feel like you and I have gotten off to the wrong foot tonight.
Oh, it's in the notes.
Who's the host?
Okay.
We'll be right back with the meme of the week and the viewer mail right after this commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Have you seen this new video game out that's based on the whole Harry Potter universe? I think it's called like Hogwarts Legacy or something like that, where you get to be a kid that goes to Hogwarts and you grow up and become a wizard and you get to be in one of the houses and all this shit. It's crazy.
I heard something about it. Yeah.
Everybody's playing it right now because everyone's living their fantasy of getting to be a student at Hogwarts. And I thought, isn't it crazy that only 13% of wizards commit 52% of the dark arts?
Oh, I did not know that.
It's nuts. Anyway,
Wow.
so let me tell you about tonight's sponsor, which is Pat Crest Botanicals, which you can find at patcrestbotanicals.com. If
Oh.
you use promo code It's Too Late, it's all one word, It's Too Late,
Mhm.
you get 30% off your entire order.
Are you lying to me? 30%?
Have I ever lied to you?
I don't know. Have you? Are
I
you
don't know.
now?
Have I?
30%.
I've actually got some of it right here. This is the Ascend 3000. Can we get a shot of that?
Oh yeah. Feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if I had a little bit more of this, I could go on doing the rest of tonight's show, to be honest with you. I actually want to read this because this is really important. It's gluten-free for people
That's
who
important.
are who I think people with Down syndrome can't have gluten or something. I don't know. It's vegan, and I can't actually read that third. My eyes do. Jesus Christ! I can't even read it, man.
Yep.
It
Here
says
you go.
gluten-free and vegan. No, there I don't go. You shut the hell up. I'm not ready to.
Well,
I can't. I just gotta put it
join
up to
us.
my good eye. I gotta put it up to my good eye. Anyway, that's Pat Crest Botanicals, promo code. It's Too Late.
Yeah.
So, are you a big Star Trek person? Do you like Star Trek?
I've seen a few, but I don't pursue it. So no, not really.
A few like movies or the shows?
Oh, just the shows.
Oh yeah, okay.
No.
So,
Yeah.
of course, I've been very vocal of saying that I think that Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek series.
I hear
But
that. Yeah.
But a lot of people think that The Next Generation was the best series. And so to give it a fair shake, I went back and I was watching some of The Next Generation. I mean, I've watched through the series a few times, whatever. And so I was going back and I was watching it. And I saw in the final season, oh my God, there was an episode I'd never seen before. I've been like 37 years on this earth believing I've seen all the shows and I missed an episode. And then I got really excited because I was like, this is so cool. I get to see a new episode of Star Trek The Next Generation after all this time. I actually took a clip of it. Here, take a look.
Computer, generate a replica of Counselor Deanna Troi at age 38 after bearing 3 children. Make her 200 feet tall and generate a medieval landscape. Computer, place her several kilometers away and load her into a catapult that is powerful enough to launch her into the air. Make sure her legs are spread and adjust the trajectory so that Counselor Troy's vagina will collide with my exact position. Computer, have Counselor Troi screen passages from the collected works of Hitler's speeches while she is mid-air. Randomize selection. Disengage safety protocols. Submit file Picard's suicide message to Starfleet and Counselor Troi. Computer, launch.
Is that how it ended?
Yeah, that was the end. That's what happened to Picard.
Oh. Okay. I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see, you got to watch these shows so that you understand the context
Okay.
and the nuance
Yeah.
of why he killed himself with a 200-foot tall Counselor Troi vagina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was weird.
And you people who watched last week thought that was the bottom. You have no idea the type of stuff we have saved up, just waiting. Hey, Dave.
Yes, Alan.
What time is it?
It's time for meme of the week. Yeah.
Cops wrapping their wife's skiff for Valentine's Day.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh my.
because they, They beat their
Yeah.
wives. It's like a lot. Probably, you know what? Probably too much. Now that we brought it up, like
Really think about
there's correcting behavior, but then there's too much.
It's over the line.
Yeah. But we do have a bonus meme. Check out the bonus meme.
Oh no.
Her. If you think we're gonna fuck on the first date, you must be retarded. Me.
You said there was no swear words.
No, I said there was no swear words in the Star Trek clip.
Oh. I should have been more specific.
You know what's crazy is that that's not even the worst word that's going to be said between now and the end of the show.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, you'll know it when you hear it.
Okay.
Let's answer some viewer mail. Dave, you look scared.
I genuinely am.
All right, it's fine. We're doing good. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Dave, is the increase in Chinese spycraft an inflation problem?
Oh.
Because they're balloons.
You inflate the balloons.
You know, I was working on a whole bit for the monologue where I would say it was going to be about the spy balloons and then other UFOs, and then I was going to say, let's check in with the president, and it was going to be a clip from the president from Independence Day, and he was going to say, let's take the sons of bitches down, and that was going to be the whole clip. Yeah. I decided not to do it because, you know,
sounds like a lot of work.
It'd be a lot of work for like 7 seconds of people to go, and then that'd be it. You know. Tim Weissong writes, Dear Alan and Dave, is there a true lack of creativity in the entertainment industry? Clearly not. Or are the good stories still being written, but just being passed over? That's actually a good question. So a lot of people complain about how like everything you see is comic book, based on something, remake, you know, sequel from like 20 years later, remakes. I definitely think that's just tired. No one wants to see all that crap. But like there's still people writing, right? So it's like how are there no new stories getting on the screen? And I think people are being passed over. I think that if you're not writing something that's specifically tailored for modern audiences, then a lot of these studios will not. Like you ever sees like some of the like documentaries and stuff where they'll say like the making of this film or that film, and sometimes it'll say in there like, well, we really took a big chance on this, or this director wasn't really well known, or whatever, and you're like, imagine if they didn't and we wouldn't have that. I think that they don't do that anymore.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think it's business, and it's got to follow the equation. If it doesn't, it's not getting passed.
I actually looked this up. Listen to this. Mario Puzo, who wrote a book that at the time was the highest selling paperback of all time, it was called The Godfather, had to sell the rights to the film to the studio for $12,500 because he had a bunch of gambling debt. And then they got at the time, very young, like 25 or 26-year-old director named Francis Ford Coppola. But at the time, he was just some dude, you know. And they were like, we bought this script for like $12,000. Let's give it to this kid and see what happens. And it turned out to be The Godfather. But today they wouldn't do that. There's no way. It would be like, yeah, but you know, is there diverse trans people in it? And then when the answer is no, it would be okay. Well, we're not gonna do that. I swear to God, that's the last time I'm gonna mention The Godfather.
I don't believe you.
You're right to be skeptical. Celeste Annis writes, Dear Alan and Dave, why do you love Dave?
This might have been a better question for like last week.
I feel like
before yesterday.
Yeah. I feel like it's like a Valentine's themed question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
sweet.
I thought Mary was okay. So I thought Mary would give us a Valentine's themed question, and Celeste would give us a food themed question. What we got instead was Celeste giving us a Valentine's themed question, and Mary asking something about French fries. We'll get to it later. But anyway,
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Celeste asking me why I love Dave is asking why the sky is purple. It's not.
Yeah. You had me in the first half.
Yeah.
Quick redirect.
I'm telling you, as soon as you finish watching The Godfather Part 2 and write a, we'll say 1,500 word essay on why you liked it, then we're back on board.
Good. So this can be fixed. Good.
Yeah. Well, you know, people have the. I'm learning about relationship stuff, and I've learned recently that people are really into this whole like what type of love is your type or whatever. Like some
Of
people
love
are in.
languages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love language. Yeah. Oh, so you know.
I've read
Okay.
the book. Yeah.
So what is the one where it's like gestures or acts or whatever?
Acts of service.
Acts. Yeah. So you owe an act of service
Okay.
based in or around The Godfather Part 2,
Okay.
and there you go.
That's your love language. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it makes
Wow.
sense now. It's yeah. Okay.
We're really getting to know each other.
Yeah.
All right.
She didn't ask why you love me though. Well, fuck y'all. Aaron Kittner writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, what is the best date you ever went on?" Ooh, Dave, what's the best date you ever went on? I'm gonna assume it's with Mary, just so you don't get in trouble. But
I'm gonna assume that too. No, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was our first date, and you won't believe this. It's a little foggy, but I remember she had another job, and she told me to come pick her up at work after she was done. So I went up to TGI Fridays, and I sat in the parking lot because I knew her shift wasn't done yet, and I hung out and I cleaned my car and got it all ready and stuff, and she never came out, so I gave her a call, and I'm like, "Where you at?" And she's like, "Where you at?" And I said, "I'm at Fridays," and she says, "I work at Applebee's." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll be right down." And then it was awesome after that. It was a good time.
okay, but the question was, what was the best date? Are you saying
was it.
Are you saying that what made it the best date is you went to the wrong place?
I remember it, so it's pretty special.
All right.
Just like Mary, I'll never forget it.
Somebody in chat says Alan is the child who pulls girls' hair because he doesn't understand that he has a crush on them. Okay,
Aw.
yeah, but she's into that shit. So anyway,
You might know more than you think.
yeah. Kirk Davis writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, does Michelle Obama have junk way bigger than you, my friend?"
Oh,
Yeah,
oh. Do we have a zing button?
yeah. I don't know. What do we have a zing button? I mean, we have laugh tracks, but God knows those are never going to be used. There's no point in
No.
discussing it.
I don't know if they work.
Yeah, nobody does. Gary Dockster writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, what is the most boomer-like activity that you enjoy?"
Oh, boomer-like activity.
Boomer-like, yeah. So what's a boomer-like activity, and then what's one that you enjoy?
Oh, you know what I like?
What?
I like to, after I mow the lawn, just kind of like stand there and look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, admire my work, or especially like a good snow blowing job, like when I'm during the winter when it's really high and you have like these perfect lines, like the driveway to the sidewalk, and it's just straight walls, and I'll stare at it for like 20 minutes.
Okay, so I live in the South, so I have no idea what you're talking about. You mean there's
Yeah.
snow and walls?
No, you make walls because your snowblower cuts right through it, and if it's like 2 or 3 feet, you get this nice snow wall that just outlines your driveway and the sidewalks.
We have to roll up all the snow from 3 yards to have one ball to throw at a cop. All right, we don't walls.
Yeah, we get walls of snow.
Yeah. Sean Hatchie writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, how does LinkedIn work?" It fucking doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn
I
doesn't
think
do.
I'm on there. They keep sending me emails. I don't know what it means.
Oh, yeah, you're probably getting people checking out your profile. Just, you know.
Oh no.
Yeah. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is of all the social medias are just abject, just disasters. LinkedIn. I swear to God, I mean this when I say it. LinkedIn is the worst. Every single person on LinkedIn is only there to be seen and share those really cringe, like corporate motivational posts. None of those people are there to actually like discuss employment opportunities and professional enrichment. It's all just, you know, if you work hard, then do good. This message brought to you by Walmart. You're like, Jesus Christ, fucking kill yourself. So I'm sorry, visit euthanasia.com where we're getting that way. I'm just kind of a powder keg right now, you know.
Yeah.
It all started with movie night, but I'm just kidding. It started way before movie night. But movie night kind of like it sparked it, you know.
That's understandable.
Rachel Watson Kennerly writes, Dear Alan and Dave, do all your kisses begin with K? I'm going to reinterpret Rachel's question to mean, do you feel obligated to buy your significant other expensive things? Like, do you buy Mary jewelry, or is Mary going to be like, what am I going to do with this shit?
It's kind of like that. Like every Christmas, like I'll get her like a little card that says we're gonna go to the jewelry store and you can pick out whatever you want, you know, and then we just never do it because she doesn't care about that stuff. She'd rather I just took her out to a restaurant or something, some quality time, her love language.
Oh, that's nice. So then you get to say the next time you have a fight, I bought you a diamond ring for 12 years in a row.
Yeah.
She just didn't pick it out, but you did.
No.
It was on the card. Said it.
It was.
Yep.
She's got the coupons.
Yeah, it expired. I mean.
Yep. Sorry.
Yikes. Keith McQuarrie writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is your all-time favorite Super Bowl halftime show? Prince.
Oh.
Prince. What a fucking amazing halftime show that was. And it actually was raining during Purple Rain. Like, this is scripted.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Prince is dope.
Janet Jackson.
Well, then.
She's talented. They had that Disney kid on there. That was a good show.
Ryan Seifert writes, oh my God, like, so we're at 40 minutes into this fucking show, right? And the interview's like 40 minutes long, dude. Anyway, Ryan Seifert writes, Dear Alan and Dave, if you walk into a closet, is it possible to exit the closet without being gay, or are you just stuck there forever? So Ryan, I'm assuming Ryan is messaging from his phone inside the janitor's closet at the place.
Yeah, he doesn't want people to think that he's gay. So he's stuck.
I think if nobody sees you leave the closet, then yeah.
So you're gonna want to peek out first.
Yeah. Yeah, dabble. Just try it out. Yeah. Man.
We accept you, Ryan.
Yeah. Jonathan Carranza writes, Dear Alan and Dave, what is your opinion of the Super Bowl?
No.
Well, you guys watched the game, right? Even though you were not as excited. Yeah.
Yeah, we did kind of watch it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a good game.
It was all right.
Well, see, a lot of Super Bowls are really crappy. I think it's because of nerves, you know, like the team, you know, just teams are, and that like those 2 weeks, that extra layoff there, so a little rusty, and so sometimes Super Bowl games can be kind of ugly. That game was pretty tight. So
yeah, it was.
Yeah. D3 writes, Dear Dad, why don't you say you love me?
What?
Well, here we go. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I do. Now he's making me doubt myself. Hold on a second. I love you. There you go. All right, took care of that.
Yeah, that counts. And notice, Ryan, he didn't make eye contact when he told another man he loved him, so it's not gay.
No.
Yeah. And finally this evening, Mary Lynn what happened here? I don't know. Mary Lynn Willimowski writes, Dear Alan and Dave.
Oh, here we go.
I do that every week, and then she doesn't set us up with a really good, like, we got them. It's always like, what's your favorite color? And you're like...
No, D3 did that this week.
Yeah, yeah. In your opinion, what restaurant, whether fast food or sit down, has the best French fries?
Oh. You want me to take this one?
You got a king French fry?
Oh yeah, right away.
What is it?
It's the Arby's curly fries.
Ooh.
I mean, it's almost like a different animal, but that's the best French fry.
See, Arby's is a restaurant that I just don't ever think about, because who in their right mind would ever go to an Arby's? But yeah, their curly fries are dope.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I have a good story about that. See, the thing about French fries is that you can there's what you visualize.
Mm-hmm.
There's what you conceptualize that you're going to get when you go to the restaurant versus what that kitchen actually prepares that day, right?
Yeah, there's no quality control there.
Because like McDonald's, like millions and millions of people love McDonald's fries. But you know how sometimes you get them and they're undercooked and they're just soggy, and it's just like that's no.
Or they're like 5 minutes old and now they're garbage.
No, you just put that right in the trash. Yeah, right in the trash. But I actually, this was last week. I went to a McDonald's, and you know how when you're leaving, because you've been over here. You know how when you're leaving my place, you can turn right and go to a Waffle House, or you can turn left and go to a Waffle House.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is also true of McDonald's.
Oh.
You can turn right and go to McDonald's, or you can turn left and go to McDonald's. I live in a magical place. It's crazy.
Just right in the middle.
Yeah. And so I went, the one on the right is technically like 30 seconds closer. But for some reason, I got to the stop sign and I'm like, let's just pump up and turn across traffic, because I just felt like feeling alive, you know? So I turn left and I go to the left McDonald's. And they have a new staff. They had one of these deals where everyone just walks out because, wage slavery, and then they have to hire a whole new staff. And so they've got a new staff, and the restaurant, when I got there, was being run entirely by two homely women.
Okay.
And they didn't let that stop them from being damn good at making McDonald's food.
No kidding.
Yeah, like they won't ever get to have a family or feel love, but they made those fries just the perfect crispy golden brown. They actually did this. They said, "Sir, can you wait an extra minute? We're going to make you some fresh fries." And I said, "Oh, I'll wait."
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have waited 45 minutes if I knew they were going to bring the fries exactly the way I want them, and they did. That
is a rare treat.
It is a rare treat. It actually made me. I was both happy and angry. Happy that I got the right fries, and angry thinking all the times I spent money on a product I didn't want.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Like, if we didn't have a guest, the show's over.
Yeah.
Like, we're done. That's it. But we
really
still
is. Oh my gosh.
All right.
We should probably move along, yeah.
Okay. You know what, Dave? If you want to change out of your suit and stuff during the interview, that's fine. It won't even bother me, since we're kind of running a little bit behind here. People are arguing about fries. Jesus. All right, here we go. We're gonna be back to talk about what makes a good bill and a bad bill right after this commercial break. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Are you going to do the God. Guys, welcome back to the show. Our guest this evening is the National Communications Director of the 10th Amendment Center. The 10th Amendment Center, of course, being a constitutional think tank based out of California. I want you to take a look at their website right here, Constitution 101, with that message at the bottom, Concordia res parve crescunt, which, of course, is Latin for the South will rise again. Mike Maharrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for that fine introduction. I'm just disappointed that I didn't hear the word neo-Confederate.
Well, you're stealing my thunder because that was going to be the next segment. So
damn it!
I hate you. You didn't do the on time. You didn't. Let's just go ahead and. You can't. It's almost like we don't rehearse this stuff. So. I hate you so much. Neo-Confederate is a word that people like to bandy around when people talk about states' rights or invoking the 10th Amendment, because a hotbed of Neo-Confederate is California, where the 10th Amendment Center is based. So for people that are maybe new watching the show that haven't seen your 87 appearances on the program, tell us a little bit about the 10th Amendment Center.
10th Amendment Center is an organization based in Los Angeles, California. That was bad. Not on my game. Let's try that again. We need the technical difficulty sign again.
No, I can't play it again because you know that they actually ding us for that on YouTube.
Do they really?
Yeah, that whatever that tune is. They ding us for that.
Oh my. Anyway, so the 10th Amendment Center. We are an organization. I don't really like the word think tank because that sounds like some stuffy Washington, D.C. thing with the guys with a bunch of suits and
because you guys don't think or have tanks, right?
Exactly. Nor do we have suits or any money. So there's
yeah, you clearly don't. Jesus. Feel free to dress up for a show next time. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. About the 10th Amendment Center.
Yeah. So the 10th Amendment Center, we basically do two things. We do constitutional education. We talk about the Constitution as it was originally understood in the founding generation when it was ratified, which is where I think you find the actual meaning of the Constitution. What did the people who ratified it think it meant? So we talk about those things because most people don't know. And I think if you're going to have a constitution, a supreme law of the land, people should have some idea of what it was supposed to mean. The other part of the work that we do is because nobody understands what it's supposed to mean, and because the federal government has grown so large and so out of control and so out of the bounds of the Constitution, we do activism politically at the state level, trying to come up with ways for state and local governments to effectively block or at least minimize the exercise of unconstitutional federal powers. And we do that through this process that formally is called nullification, which is another word that will get you branded as a racist or a neo-Confederate. But actually, it's just, as James Madison put it, a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. Getting state and local governments to simply quit enforcing federal laws, quit implementing federal programs. And because the federal government depends so much on state and local action, if the state and local actors don't act, then a lot of things don't get done. As Michael Bolden, our executive director, is fond of saying, partnerships don't work very well if half the team quits. So our goal is to get half the team at least to quit, and then hopefully roll back some of the stuff that the feds are doing.
Now, one thing that I think is really interesting about TAC that I think that people just sort of don't have the meta conversation about it very often is, if there's lots of organizations that talk about the First Amendment, right? Everyone knows the First Amendment, freedom of speech, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But people who talk about the First Amendment only talk about First Amendment issues. Ditto for Second Amendment, whether it's the goons at the NRA or Gun Owners America, who are just a teensy bit better.
Right.
They're dealing specifically in matters of firearms, right? Because they're really only talking about the Second Amendment. But the 10th Amendment Center, which is named after the 10th Amendment, is really talking about everything. It's talking about all manner of legislation all across the country. Talk a little bit about why that's important and maybe why that's perhaps a good sort of marketing and strategy move as opposed to just being one little thing.
Right. Well, it really comes back to what I mentioned, the fact that the federal government has run so far out of bounds. It is so far beyond the powers that it was intended to exercise. And it is involved in all kinds of things that were never intended. If you look at what the founders said the federal government was supposed to do, it was very limited. James Madison summed it up very well in Federalist 45. He said the powers delegated to the federal government by this proposed constitution are few and defined, and those which are left to the states and people are numerous and indefinite. So because the federal government has now stuck its hands into all of the numerous and indefinite powers that the states were supposed to exercise, the 10th Amendment Center is operating in all of these policy areas trying to get the feds to butt out. And that's really why we end up involved in so many different policy areas. And the beauty of it from just a political strategy point of view is that we can do work in every state. Because no matter who's in control, whether it's moderate Democrats, lefties, moderate Republicans, hardcore right-wingers, no matter who's in control, there are things that those groups of people want the federal government to get out of. Now, it's a really hard sell to get anybody to agree that the feds should get out of everything, which they should. But it makes it possible for us to work across a very broad spectrum because again, we can find somebody who wants to roll back surveillance. We can find somebody who wants to roll back federal gun control. We can find people who are interested in sound money and all of these other issues we're involved in. So it works both from a constitutional standpoint, and it also works from a strategic standpoint because it very much broadens our work. If you're just doing First Amendment stuff, you're going to find places where they just don't care about free speech. And what are you going to do? Well, nothing.
Well, now that you're talking about the spectrum, you're talking this audience's language. Mike, as we're talking, it's mid-February. We're still in the throes of a new legislative session, and I know that a new legislative session is busy time at the 10th Amendment Center.
It is.
So tell everybody a little bit about what goes on at the start of a new legislative cycle, particularly for TAC, and maybe comment a little bit on if you notice any nuance or difference when there's a crop of new freshman representatives and senators taking office.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the kind of process that we go through is we look at what is being introduced at the state level. And this actually starts long before the legislative sessions begin. So this work starts back in November, even late October, when people start pre-filing bills and drafting legislation. And we track hundreds of bills. Really, this is Michael Bolden's kind of what he does. He goes through and he looks for things that are within our issue kind of bucket. And when he finds things that look like they might be pushing back against federal power in those particular policy areas, he'll put them on a tracking sheet. And the ones that seem more promising to get some traction or things that we really want to promote, he'll send those to me. And then I'll actually read through them more carefully, determine whether or not they actually are doing the things that we want them to do. And if they do, then we start reporting on those bills. And we'll write hundreds of bill reports over the course of a legislative session, describing what the bill does, describing how it fits into the 10th Amendment Center strategy, and then tracking those. And as they move through the legislative session, we'll continue to report on them and report amendments and do work behind the scenes, working with legislators and lobby groups to try to put pressure on legislators to get those bills passed. So it's really a kind of a legislative lobbying, tracking, nuts and bolts kind of thing that we're doing. And I think that the work that we do is very effective in supporting legislators, supporting groups that are trying to get things passed and helping get those things pushed through. We're kind of the meta people, and we can provide talking points, and we can provide, action alerts and get people to make phone calls and do those kinds of things that are necessary to get legislation passed. So a lot of the work is really behind the scenes. You'll see some of it on the blog at 10thamendmentcenter.com. And so that's really kind of what we're doing as far as nuts and bolts. It is interesting when you get a new crop of representatives, and there are certain representatives that are inclined to do the kind of legislation that we're interested in getting passed. Kind of your liberty Republicans and your libertarian leaning people. And it's fun when those folks get elected because they're very enthusiastic. And the mistake that they sometimes make, they'll introduce too many bills. They'll try to do everything at once. I think sometimes it's more effective to focus on one or two things and try to push those. But I enjoy the enthusiasm of the new legislators. And then if they last long enough, we get to watch them become cynical and grumpy.
Well, speaking of just focusing on one or two things, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like different legislative sessions sort of kind of have their own identity of these are the hot button issues, whether because something happened in the news and that spurred a lot of debate or action, or whether it's just, a bill's time has come, who knows?
Right.
What are the hot button issues that are leading the session this year?
Well, I think some things that are getting traction this year, and we're still early in the session. So at this point, we're still really kind of in that stage where bills are getting introduced. Some legislatures have started into the committee process, and that's when you really start to get a feel for what has the potential of actually moving forward. And we haven't seen a lot of committee hearings yet. But things that I feel like there's a lot of momentum just based on the number of bills introduced. One thing is just pushing back against federal gun control. And I think part of that is due to the two executive orders that were implemented over the last 6 or 8 months, one dealing with the pistol braces and the other one with the so-called lower thirds. I think that made a lot of pro-gun people angry. And so there's a lot of desire to push back against federal gun control. And the thing that's nice about that is because we had a couple of bills that were passed a couple of years ago in Arizona and Missouri, we're seeing very tight legislation being introduced from the get-go. It's interesting. You can go back to look at Missouri, and they passed what's known as the Second Amendment Protection Act. And in a nutshell, it prohibits state enforcement of a broad swath of federal gun control. And it took many, many years to get that bill actually finally passed and signed into law. It happened just 2 years ago. It was 5 or 6 sessions before that. And through that process, the bill kind of evolved and you kind of learn the language that's tricky and it gets better and better. So we're at the point now with that Second Amendment Protection Act that it's a very well-refined piece of legislation. We worked out the kinks. We've overcome a lot of the objections. And I think I feel like some of those are going to pass in some other states this year. Another issue that is really moving forward is the Defend the Guard Act, which is a bill that would prohibit governors from deploying National Guard troops from their state into active duty combat unless there's a declaration of war or one of the 3 criteria in the Constitution for deployment of the militia is actually triggered. And we've seen this introduced in, I'd say, probably half a dozen states now. There's actually a hearing in Maryland that's coming up that I'm going to be testifying at virtually. There's hearings coming up in Arizona and some other states. And, even though this may not be a bill, it might not be the point where it's going to get passed. It's definitely gotten to the point where it's generating attention, it's generating discussion. And that's kind of part of the evolution of legislation as you kind of try to work it through the system. So I'm really excited about that one just because I think it's such an important bill to kind of roll back the warfare state. And also because after, again, a number of years, we're really starting to see some momentum in this. And I've been told by some activists in Maryland that they really feel like they have a shot at least getting it to the House floor this year, which would be a kind of a big step for that type of legislation. Asset forfeiture reform, I think, is the third piece of legislation that, again, has kind of been ramping up over the last 4 or 5 years. And we're seeing more and more states that are finally realizing, maybe there should at least be a criminal conviction before we take people's shit from them. So that's starting to move forward. And again, the legislation has been refined, and it's gotten to the point that some of the problematic language has been removed. So I think we'll see some of those pass as well this year. So I'd say those are three. But again, as we move forward, we may see other things that kind of jump to the surface.
Speaking of problematic language, Mike meant take people's stuff from them. That's what Mike meant.
Thank you for translating that.
No problem.
I get loosey-goosey on this late night stuff.
I know. Well, what's funny is we kind of have a running gag where I tell people, hey, we're trying to clean up the show, and then I'll drop an F-bomb like 15 seconds later. So I kind of want to circle back because you talked about bills being pre-filed at the end of the year prior, and then there's a lot of bills getting introduced, and talking about the strategy of, well, maybe you're introducing too many bills.
Right.
And then of course there's committee assignments and all that. I think most people, other than perhaps seeing, how a bill becomes a law from Schoolhouse Rock one time in fourth grade, most people have no idea how this process works at all. So I want you to maybe take just a minute or two to talk about a bill being introduced. It's going to be read, and then it's going to be perhaps assigned to a committee. And of course, unfortunately, if any halfway decent bill that you or I were like goes to a committee and it's never seen or heard from again, I think the average person thinks that if you or I get elected, we can take a bill and go to the House and say, let's vote right now. And they think that's how government works. And what I'm getting at before I'll turn it back over to you is I think people who don't know any better then get frustrated because they think, well, why doesn't super awesome Congressman X, who I voted for and who says all the things I like, why doesn't that guy go and we'll use Thomas Massey as an example. So he introduced a bill to get rid of the Federal Department of Education at the federal level. So why aren't they voting on that? Why aren't they voting on that this very afternoon? Why aren't they talking about getting rid of Federal Department of Education? Well, by God, he introduced the bill. I don't understand why they're not doing it. So, Mike Maharrey, why aren't they doing it?
Well, partly because I had a technical issue and the camera turned off again, but I think I've corrected that. So I'm back.
I just want to point out, I did such a great job of hiding that, and then you announce it to the world.
Oh, well, I didn't think I got it in time. Anyway, nothing to see here. I'm not very, very good.
Folks, really quick, I've seen behind the curtain at this 10th Amendment Center. I got to tell you, all these people do is spend half the day saying, "Oh, hello." I don't know when they do anything, to be honest with you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
I feel like I'm not very good at this. So the question was the legislative process, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people are pretty clueless about how that works, and it is a long, arduous process, and sometimes it's a miracle that anything ever gets passed. So in most states, a bill, once it's introduced, let's say it's introduced in the House by a representative, it will first go to a House committee. And the first hurdle is it has to get a hearing. And in a lot of states, committee chairs have quite a bit of power. They get to decide what gets heard and what doesn't get heard. And in some states like Missouri, the Speaker of the House actually gets to decide what bills get assigned to committee. So you could have a bill that never even gets a committee assignment. But in most states, it'll go to a committee. The committee chair has to decide to give it a hearing. And then once a hearing is had, then it needs to be voted on in that committee. And at that point, a lot of times they'll have amendments and discussion. And if the bill passes committee, then in some states, it will go straight to the House floor. In other states, it'll actually go to another committee. So like in Arizona, it goes to a standing committee, and then every bill goes to the Rules Committee, so it has to pass too. In Florida, it'll have to pass as many as 3 or 4 committees before it actually gets to the House floor for a vote. And then you have the process. You'll get the vote in the House. Then it'll go over to the Senate side, and they'll go through the exact same process. It'll go to a Senate committee, they'll have debate, they'll do amendments, they'll have to vote. It has to pass that vote, go to the Senate floor and vote. And then most of the time, the Senate bill and the House bill will actually end up being two different versions because the Senate will make amendments, has to go back to the House. They have to either agree with the Senate amendments or they can decide that they're going to not go with the Senate amendment. So you'll see some bills that actually pass both houses that never go to the governor. But if you finally do get everybody agrees on the language, it's been approved by both chambers, identical language, then it'll go to the governor and the governor can either sign or veto it. So it is a very long process. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of amendments that'll get added. There's a lot of procedural things that opponents can use to kill a bill or stonewall a bill. And, you know, it can be frustrating at times because it's like, why can't you just get this done? But it's just the way the legislative process is. And what's really amazing is when you see a bill just fly through and it goes, you know, within 3 or 4 days, it'll go from committee to the floor, to the other chamber, to the committee, to the floor, and then to the governor, just like that. And usually that's crappy stuff when everybody agrees like that.
Well, that sort of leads me to my next question is we're not talking about bills that are crappy that we don't want, as in it's a bill that says you can't wear red shirts on a late night show. We're talking about bills that actually do things that, at least in essence, we agree with. We want these bills to pass.
Right.
Now, you guys have been at this for a long time. You've covered not hundreds, thousands of bills in all 50 states. Mm-hmm. Besides just simply addressing things that we want, what are the hallmarks of a good bill versus a bad bill?
Well, speaking in kind of in generalities, I mean, obviously there's the policy thing. So in any given thing, there's policy things that you want to get done. So, you know, with a bill that's related to federal gun control, we want the state to stop enforcing that federal gun control. So that's kind of obvious. But I think there are some things that are hallmarks of good legislation, regardless of the policy, that I think you can pinpoint. One of those things is the simpler, the better. One of the big mistakes I've seen folks try to do is they'll do a bill and they'll try to address 12 issues in a single piece of legislation. They almost never pass because somebody's going to disagree with something in there. So it's much better to split that up into 12 different bills. Deal with one issue, use language as simple as possible, and make it do what the policy is that you want it to do. So I think really short and simple is best, but a lot of legislators like to go, complicated and big, and that usually ends up being a disaster. You do see some of these big kind of omnibus bills that'll go through and pass, and a lot of times you'll find provisions in it that we really like, and then the rest of it's garbage. And then you kind of have to decide, well, do I support this or not? Does the good outweigh the bad? It's almost like a meat grinder. It kind of goes through this system, and you hope you get something good that comes out of it. But one thing that I think is really important for folks that are kind of maybe looking on the outside, and or maybe just the type of people who are interested in what's going on, and maybe they'll take the time to call their representative and push a bill forward. I think it's important when you're doing legislative stuff, and this was hard for me to learn because, like a lot of libertarians, I'm kind of a purist. I want it to be perfect, and most legislation is not. Most of it is half steps. It might do a little bit of what we want, but not the whole thing. I've learned that it's very important to be able and willing to take a slice of bread, even if you don't get the whole loaf. Because a lot of times when you get that very first step, then it'll get built on in the following years. I've seen so many libertarians and liberty-minded folks oppose decent legislation because it's not perfect. And they're cutting off their nose to spite their face when they do that, because in the long run, if you can get your foot in the door, almost always it gets better over time. I've really seen this with marijuana legislation, where you'll get a really kind of medical marijuana bill, and then the next year they'll come back and they'll change some provisions. Maybe they'll add They'll allow home growing the next year. And then a couple of years later, they might do some tax reforms. So it tends to get better over time if you can get your foot in the door. So I think it's important for folks that are following legislative action to understand that it is a process. It is often a multi-year process, and you have to take what you can get and then push forward for more. To kind of use Thomas Jefferson's quote, the liberty is gained by inches. So we have to grasp what we can at the time and then push ahead for more as we have opportunity.
All right, so we talked a little bit about then, kind of what's a good bill is straight and to the point, specific. What's the phrase? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Enemy of the good. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's look at the other end of the spectrum then. What are some things? Give us a short list of things that when you guys at TAC are looking at a bill, when you see that language, that item, whatever in a bill, you instantly say, "Oh, dead on arrival. Don't even cover it."
Yeah, stuff that's vague. And I'll give you some examples because it's easier to kind of explain by example than to talk in generalities. When you're talking about pushing back against federal action, you have to actually push back against a specific federal action. So here's the bad bill. A bad bill is any unconstitutional federal gun law is void. And people get all excited, "Oh, it's a great bill." Yeah. Well, here's the problem. What's unconstitutional? Who decides that? That basically pushes it to the courts. And when it goes to the courts, they're going to say nothing is unconstitutional, and basically everything will get enforced. So you have to be very specific about the things that you want to prohibit. So you need that list where it says, any registration of a firearm, any confiscation of a firearm cannot be enforced. It has to be very specific, actionable legislation, not this kind of vague, we don't want things to be unconstitutional. The other thing that is pretty much dead on arrival from a tax standpoint is anything that depends on federal courts. If it says if the Supreme Court says ... then we'll do ... Blah, forget it. And then another thing that you really have to look at closely with a lot of these bills is exceptions, right? So you'll get a bill to require a warrant for automatic license plate readers. That's good. But then they'll have all these exceptions, except when, I don't know, I can't think of a specific exception, but they'll make these exceptions so broad that basically it completely nullifies, using that term intentionally, the intent of the bill to require a warrant. I've seen this a lot with federal gun control stuff. They'll say, we're not going to enforce any federal gun control unless it's done with a federal task force. Well, almost all enforcement at the state level is done with the federal task force. So basically, you're just saying we're not going to enforce federal gun control unless we're going to enforce federal gun control. That kind of stuff is really bad. And sometimes it can be tricky. You can miss those exceptions and you can miss those kind of loopholes that they'll intentionally stick in bills. Because believe it or not, a lot of legislators will introduce stuff basically to grandstand. So they'll introduce bills that aren't going to do anything so they can pretend like they did something and move along, when in reality they don't really want to do what it is they're saying they're doing. And we've seen this a lot, again, with the gun control. Tennessee is a prime example right there in your state. They've passed some awful supposed sanctuary legislation, which basically creates a sanctuary for nothing because it's so vague that it doesn't even do anything.
Now, this one might be a little bit too insider baseball for the audience. I'm not sure yet, but this is why I have you here, because I'm just gonna dump it in your lap to explain instead of me explain.
Right.
You and I have discussed recently off air, talking about qualified immunity legislation, and that's a big hot topic issue right now with recent events. And it seems like annual, monthly, weekly, daily events at this point.
Right.
But you actually have a couple of different types of qualified immunity bills in different state houses and senates. You have bills that are juxtaposed to that state's constitution, and then you have bills that reference the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution. Now, you guys are talking about the Constitution, meaning the U.S. Constitution, all the time. But you were actually explaining to me that these state-level bills that reference the federal U.S. Constitution are the less valuable bills. So try to explain for the audience in a way that hopefully that myself and they will understand why that is.
It's actually pretty simple. You never want to rely on federal courts to decide anything, because federal courts are almost always going to decide in favor of federal power against state power. They're going to find in favor of government workers and not regular people. So, if it involves cops, they're going to find for the cops, not for the regular guy. So the federal system is so broken that you just want to avoid it at all costs. So that's what we're seeing in these qualified immunity bills. Qualified immunity is something that was created by the Supreme Court. It's basically a shield for law enforcement officers. If they're accused of violating somebody's rights, they can claim qualified immunity, and it's a creation of the Supreme Court. So any lawsuit that involves police officers that goes to federal court, qualified immunity is in play. So the idea of a state-level qualified immunity bill is to create a cause of action in state court so that folks can sue in state court, possibly find a remedy for the harm that's been caused, and actually hold the police officer or police department accountable without this qualified immunity defense being in play. So that's why it's imperative that they only focus on rights in violation of the state constitution, because if they bring it into the federal constitution or the Bill of Rights at the federal level, it immediately goes to federal court. That's the jurisdiction for federal lawsuits. So it would be remanded to federal court, and then qualified immunity is in play. If you just sue in state court under the state constitution or the laws of the state, federal government has nothing to do with it. Qualified immunity is not in play. So you want to keep it out of the hands of the courts. And it's the same principle as when you're talking about federal gun control. You don't want to say, we're going to not enforce anything that the Supreme Court says is unconstitutional, because then you're relying on that federal court that's already found most of this federal gun control to be constitutional. So it's really a very simple premise. Keep it out of the federal system. Keep it out of Congress. Keep it out of the federal courts. Keep things at the state level. Not saying that state courts or state governments are great. They're not. They're awful, just like the federal government is. But there's so much untilled soil at the state level that we have a chance of getting some better outcomes if we pursue things at the state level. So it's really a decentralizing principle. Bring it back to your state. Bring it back to your locality. Quit depending on the feds. As I sometimes say, don't even call the 202 area code. It's a waste of your time.
Well, Mike, we'll bring it all to a close with this one. Now, you mentioned a few of the kind of big momentum bills at the start of this legislative session, and we've talked a little bit about things that we might want, like, for instance, defend the guard. But of course, unfortunately, way more often than not, you get those non-completely burned out, cynical young representatives who come in, they want to champion liberty, they introduce some of these bills, and what happens? They don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But you said to me, it's really important that they get introduced anyway. Mm-hmm. So give your quick bumper sticker slogan for why it's important to introduce bills, even if you have a strong likelihood of, it's not going to go anywhere this year.
Well, it goes back to this whole reality that the legislative process is a long road. Very few things actually pass the first time that they're introduced. Many don't pass the second time they're introduced. Many don't pass the third time. When the state of Illinois was working on medical marijuana, it actually took 10 legislative sessions before they finally got medical marijuana legalized. So if you don't ever start the process, you're never going to get 10 years down the road and get something passed. Now, that's an extreme case. I think most things, it's kind of a 4 or 5 year build. And that's kind of what we're seeing now with the Second Amendment Protection Act. We're in about Well, with Missouri getting passed, it was about 4 or 5, 6 years. And now we're starting to see more states introduce it. And I think that time will start to compress now that we've had a couple of states pass bills, because that's an important point too. Once you get it passed in one place, other states are like, oh, okay, we can do that. You kind of got to get that first foot in the door to build that momentum. So with something like Defend the Guard, we're really at the point now that people are starting to pay attention to it. Pat McGeehan in West Virginia has been introducing this bill since 2016, but it's one guy in one state. Now, for the last couple of years, we've seen this bill introduced in multiple states. And this year, we're actually starting to see reporting about it. We're starting to see pushback from the National Guard, which means it's on their radar. And when they start worrying about it, first they ignore you, then they try to mock you. And we're kind of getting into that point. And pretty soon it becomes a real threat. So it's just this build. So you've got to get it introduced. You've got to build the momentum. You've got to get people to understand it. You've got to teach these legislators. Most of them, I hate to say it, don't know anything. If you go to your average state representative, and this was even more true 4 or 5 years ago, and said, the anti-commandeering doctrine will allow you to refuse to use your resources or personnel to enforce a federal law. They would look at you like you had horns. They'd be like, you can't do that. Well, it's built on 5 Supreme Court cases. Yes, absolutely you can, but they don't know it. So you have to educate. And part of that education process comes through these committee hearings. It comes through testimony. It comes through working things through this process. So, it's just a long process. And I think it's hard for people. It's hard for libertarians because we want liberty today. And let's be honest, we're not going to get liberty today. And it's hard for people in general because we live in a microwave culture. We want to stick it in there and put it on for a minute and then be done. And that's just not how it works. And when it comes to legislative work, it takes a long time.
Stick it in there, put it on for a minute, and then it'll be done. What a great way to wrap up our Valentine's Day episode. Mike Maharrey.
Which is why I wore red.
Oh, yeah, sure it is. Maharrey, where can people go to check out more from the 10th Amendment Center?
Well, it's really easy. You just go to 10thamendmentcenter.com. You spell it all out, TENTH amendmentcenter.com. And the first thing that I encourage people to go to is scroll down about halfway down the page and go to our State of the Nullification Movement report. You can download it for free. It's a 100-plus page PDF document that explains the strategy of what we're doing, how it works, why it works, the kind of foundational philosophy behind it. And then
we get whatever the hell that is.
I know what this is now, by the way.
What is that?
That is, for some reason, it's deciding that it wants to have my phone be the camera. So that's
why didn't you just turn your phone off?
Because it's not in here. I don't even know where it is.
Wait, how can you not know where your phone is if you can see what the phone's looking at right now?
I think it's in the living
Jesus
room.
Christ. Why am I having to tell other people how to fix their shit? All right, I'm sorry.
Know. What were we talking about?
Excuse me, your stuff. My bad.
My stuff, yes. We're trying to clean this show up. Come on.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, go download the State of the Nullification Movement report, and then you can learn about all of this stuff, and we go issue by issue. So we talk about all of these different issues, how our strategy fits into that issue, and kind of the legislative approach we're taking, the successes that we've had. It's a fantastic resource. And then if you want to learn more, you can go to the blog. And if you really want to get involved, you can support the 10th Amendment Center by becoming a member. It's like $2 a month or something. And it's a great way to support our work.
Maharrey, we're already like 8 minutes over, and I had a lightning round prepared. So you know me, that means we're going to do it anyway.
Let's do it.
All right.
Being a lightning round, that means we have to go fast, right?
Yeah. Well, by we, I mean you. I just have to read the question.
Okay.
All right. Question number 1. What is the 10th Amendment solution for spy balloons and other UFOs?
Rednecks with shotguns.
That is correct. Question number 2. What is the 10th Amendment solution to school shootings?
Shoot the shooters.
That's also correct. You're 2 for 2. Question number 3. What is the 10th Amendment solution to train derailments that dump tons of toxic chemicals into my community?
Run away!
Unfortunately, no, that's not the answer. The correct answer was gather it. You're already dead. Gather all of it that you can before it takes you and take it back where it came from. And finally, last question. This is the tiebreaker.
Okay.
All right, I got to pull up the text here. You know how we always end with a food question, right? You're going to love this one.
I like food.
What is the traditional dish from the United Kingdom, especially South and Mid Wales and the English Midlands, that is meatballs made of minced offcuts and offal, especially pork, traditionally pig's heart, liver, and fatty belly meat or bacon, together with herbs for flavoring and sometimes added breadcrumbs?
Mince pie?
Unfortunately, no. The correct answer is faggots. That's right. Faggots are meatballs made of minced offcuts and offal, especially pork, together with herbs and flavoring, and sometimes added breadcrumbs.
Meatballs.
I've always said that. Guys, we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. We're also on Odyssey. Go and support a free speech platform. It's odyssey.com. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley and @Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, get us on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, and more, thanks to Anchor FM. It's anchor.fm/Alan Mosley TV. Oh, Dave, also, check this out. We actually have an updated ad from Fox & Sons. Take a look at that, Dave. Yeah, Dave's still here. Yeah, He woke up. Look at this. Yeah. It's an updated ad. They've actually bumped it up to 18% off your order. So imagine if you were one of these dumb fucks that bought it last week, you only got 15 off. But this week, no, you geniuses.
Don't you feel stupid.
You sly devils, you. No, you're getting 18% off. Shipping is always free over orders of $37.99.
Yeah.
It's foxandsons.com. I actually have
the
Den Blend Light right here. Yeah. Hold on a second.
I forgot mine upstairs. So good.
Yeah, like you can smell this from there.
I can.
Yeah.
It's coming over BNC.
Yeah. That's something else. I actually heard from our wonderful sponsor, Mr. Fox of Fox & Sons Coffee, that some generous fellow placed a huge order last week after hearing on this show our ad. Yeah.
No kidding. It worked?
It's working.
That's
we're gonna keep it up.
Yeah, we are.
The reason why I waited to this segment to do the Fox & Sons ad is because I knew that a lot of people would be tuning in to see Maharrey. So it's like, I'm going to drop the ad when Maharrey's on as opposed to when... Because no one even watches the show in the first... Yeah. No, but...
I tried to ruin that for you.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, building upon what we talked about in the beginning of the show, I can't even imagine what the families of the victims are going through after the shooting at Michigan State. And I feel like if they were here, all I would tell them is something that I like to do when I'm feeling down.
Don't do it.
Is grab a cup of Fox & Sons coffee, which you can find at Fox & Sons. There you go. foxandsons.com.
18%.
18% off.
Wow.
It's way better than the crap that's in the stores. So
it is.
Like, you'll never see your child again, but you need a reason to keep on going. And that reason is Fox & Sons coffee. Yep.
I had some
Is this-
Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and that stuff's garbage compared to this.
Oh
Boo
yeah,
Boo
now
coffee I
yeah,
got from
now
them.
that you've had the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
I was ready to go back to Maxwell House, and then I'm like, oh no, here's good coffee.
Yeah, but you didn't want to keep getting railed by dudes, so you weren't going to drink Maxwell House. You were going to drink Thompson Suns. Yeah. Do you have a final thought, Dave?
I had fun. I'm always excited when Mike comes on. I love Mike. He's such a cool guy. So it was great to sit here and listen to you guys talk. That was fun. But yeah, fun show.
All right, but we're not doing an
I didn't
after
mean to make
party
that noise.
because we're already in the after. This is the after
Yeah.
party. We're already half an hour into the after party, so the after party has now concluded.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Yeah. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. Oh my God, Ryan is stuck in a closet drinking Maxwell House, dude.
No,
Yeah.
all the signs were there.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, yeah, we did it again.
So all I'm saying is that, like, when you're watching the scene where he's at the meeting with Sollozzo and the police captain, and the camera's panning in on him, and then you hear like the train rail in the background, and the sound keeps getting louder and louder, and like it's building the intensity before he blows that fucking cop away.